Sardinia, in the west basin of the Mediterranean Sea, is 180 kilometers from both the Italian mainland and the coast of Africa. This largely determines its climate and vegetation. What's more, its geology. Sardinia, together with Corsica and some parts of the present-day Provence, Catalonia, Gibraltar, and Morocco, is part of the sunken landmass of Tirrenia. The Italian boot had not risen from the sea yet, when on Sardinia, wild goats were grazing on the rich vegetation. Macchia, a fragrant, densely growing shrub, still determines the image of the island. Among the rock formations caused by erosion, laurel, thyme, myrtle, oregano, rosemary, and lavender grow wild. In the spring, besides wildflowers in the fields and on the hillsides, the blossoms of the almond trees and wild roses overflow the island with their fragrance. The fig tree, the agave, the cactus, and the date palm also flourish here. The olive trees and the cork oaks were planted here by humans. They're not native. The island, with its territory of more than 24,000 square kilometers, is the second biggest island of the Mediterranean, dropping slightly behind Sicily. Its length is 270, its width is 145 kilometers. Its coastline is 1,850 kilometers long and strongly structured. The sandy bays are girdled by cliffs. Gray and brown granite and trachyte rocks rise from the sea as if they'd been placed there by a decorator to enhance the intimacy. The 1,800-meter peak of the Punta La Marmora looks at its own reflection in the indigo blue water. Beside it, there are two 1,300-meter and several 1,000-meter high mountains rising on the island. Although the presence of stones and wind-polished rock formations is incontestable, the rich vegetation is still more conspicuous. The emerald green grass cover, dotted with colorful flowers, can be seen until it turns yellow from the heat of the sun. The leaves of the evergreens, the boxwoods, the pines and oaks take the scorching sun well, so the landscape is never completely without color. In this paradise of flora, bees buzz contentedly. They take care of the pollination of flowers, and not incidentally, they also make honey. The color of the honey of eucalyptus and orange is light. It's very fluid and extremely sweet, while chestnut honey is more pungent and has a dark color. On the fertile Campidoro plain between Cagliari and Oristano, large flocks of goats and sheep graze. These mountain regions are very underpopulated, and the archaic shepherd civilization is still alive here. Sardinia has preserved some things from the primeval world and that sort of intactness which is unfortunately becoming rarer all over Europe. The climate of the island is evenly mild and tropical. The average temperature in spring and summer is close to 20 degrees Celsius. In summer, it can reach 27 degrees Celsius. 30% of the 1.6 million people of Sardinia live in the capital and its agglomeration zone. A local writer, Francesco Alziator, wrote the following: Cagliari is the city of the sun. It welcomes the visitors from the blue sea with a wonder of stones and colors, trees, and glistening glass. Cagliari is the oldest city of Europe that has been continuously inhabited. As proven by findings in caves, people lived here as early as 5000 BC. The capital of Sardinia condenses in itself the entire history of the island. It has preserved, utilized, and shows something from every age. When the Punics came on shore here 2,700 years ago, the natural port of Cagliari was the first place they settled. The Punic culture then melted into the subsequent Roman culture, but the significance of the city didn't decrease. Perhaps it was smaller than other big cities of the Mediterranean. It remained seat of the province under the Byzantines, the Pisans, and the Spanish also. In the 20th century, following the proclamation of the Republic of Italy, Sardinia became an independent province in December 1947, with a local government and legislature which made Cagliari the official capital city and seat of the bishop's palace. The city covers approximately 20,000 square hectares on sloping hills facing Angel Bay. In the last decade, the city has expanded from here to every direction of the compass, but the old town always remained the center. The old town, built on a hill, was surrounded by walls and fortified it as a castle. Apart from the lift from the car park, the old town is still accessible through 2 gates only. The 2 towers, Torre San Pancrazio and Torre dell'Elefante, are masterpieces of medieval Pisan architecture. The lookout terraces in front of the San Remi bastion were developed in the 19th century. This age was not about defense or isolation anymore. On the contrary, it was about opening up. Beginning then, the island wanted to present its natural and historical treasures to the world. From the terraces, we can have a look around the city, the bay, the lagoons, and the mountains rising in a distance. The layout of the streets of the old town embracing the castle hill is determined by Baroque facades and cupolas, with the exception of the medieval castello, the dome, and the palaces of the noblemen, the bishops, and the viceroy. This was once the seat from where the island was governed in a worldly, religious, and cultural sense alike. The University of the city was founded in 1606, and the dark old buildings of the uniquely intimate old town, half ruined and in need of renovation, only the poor and the old were living by the end of the 20th century. Now, wealthier citizens, mostly artists, architects, painters, and restorers, have purchased these houses. Once again, vividness has moved into the narrow cobblestone streets, divided by arches. On the intimate little squares and under the arcades of the busy Via Roma, life bustles on, in Italian style. Perhaps less underwears hanging on the lines, and people seem to be a little quieter, but we're not in Rome after all. The Sardinians are more moderate, and perhaps a little more serious than the Italians. However, the pizza and the cappuccino are delicious here also. In the old town stands the Cathedral of Cagliari, which is a Roman-style 3-nave dome consecrated in 1257. The facade that we can see today was made in the 20th century, modeled after the dome in Pisa. The marble pulpit, depicting scenes from the life of Christ, was also made for the Pisa dome originally. It's Pisano's masterpiece, made in 1311, that stands there now. However, the crescent-shaped golden mosaics over the gates were originally designed for here, the works of local artists that have been renovated recently. Among the sites of the Castle District, the Archaeological and the Geological Museum are worth mentioning, along with the Library of the University with its 100,000 volumes. The most important treasures of the National Museum date back to prehistoric ages. East of downtown, on the top of a hill providing a great view, stands a huge church with a Baroque facade. It's the Santa Maria di Bonaria. In 1370, a painting depicting the Virgin Mary was washed ashore here, which probably originated from a wrecked ship. A church was built just for this picture, where primarily sailors go to pray. Pula lies 30 kilometers from the capital city. It can be accessed through a narrow promontory which separates the open sea from the lagoon lakes and the salt distillers. Many people living in this pleasant little town work in Cagliari. Santa Margherita de Pula is the beach resort of the town. The villas of wealthy people alternate with higher-priced hotels, holiday estates, and campsites with more modest demands, apartment houses, and open beaches. Pula is also a starting point of horse and mountain bike tours, since it lies at the foot of the scenic Monte Orbai. We can plan any kind of activities. The local travel agencies will readily be of assistance. We can reserve accommodation here and ask for guides for mountain climbing or horse tours. We can also rent vehicles here if we want to rove the region by bicycle or scooter. However, the watchtowers of San Macario and Coltalazzo and the little procession church of San Alfisio can be visited on foot. The These are only 4 or 5 kilometers from the center of the town. It's a longer excursion to get to Torre de Gia, the romantic bathing place dotted with little lagoons. Among the sand dunes covered with junipers, oleanders, and myrtles, narrow footpaths wind. Going further, the road leads to the most southern part of the island, Capo Magliatano. This rolling country is popular with fans of village tourism. Those who are interested may look up the web page of the Tourist Office of Sardinia on the internet. This, by the way, may be done on the spot. In espressos, bars, and better hotels, there are usually 2 or 3 computers for public use. Pula has also become a favorite of foreigners in the past decades. On one hand, the old Roman port town Nora, the excavated ruins of which attract many visitors, is an interesting sight. On the other hand, Pula, with its promenade, cafes, and restaurantes, combining the flavors of the Sardinian and the Italian cuisine, is a real holiday resort. The beach is long and sandy, dotted sparsely with rocks. There's a golf course and all kinds of water sports can be pursued. Since the building of large hotel blocks made of cement has been avoided, it's recommended to book a room in advance in one of the smaller hotels in the area. The Sinis Peninsula was declared a nature reserve by the UNESCO. The lagoons and salty lakes around Cabras are home to many fish and waterfowl. The subsistence of fishermen is ensured by the eel and the grayling, and the botaga, the local caviar made of the spawn of the grayling. Here, Bossoni's ancient crafts made of reeds are still in use, and some fishing huts made of reeds can also be seen. These waters, abundant in fish, are highly appreciated by water and wading birds. Pink flamingos, snow-white egrets, and many other strictly protected species of birds live here. In this area, we can find beaches at Arotas, San Giovanni, and Mari Ermi. And in Cabras, the sandy beach of Torre Grande offers not only opportunity for swimming and sunbathing, but also good fish restaurants. As the old proverb goes, cursed is the fish when in water for the 3rd time, which means that the fish which swam in water first and was cooked in water after that must be accompanied by some other drink when consumed. On the Sinis Peninsula, it doesn't pose a problem, since this is the region that produces the best wines on the island. This is where the Sardinian sherry vernacchia is made. It's a real specialty which would be a sin to miss. The local gourmets use it for cooking too. Grapes grown on the nearly glowing hot sand give the fire to this magnificent drink. Another dessert wine, Malvasia, is made in the regions of Bossa, Sorso, and Senori. Of white wines, which go great with fish and seafood, the straw-yellow Vermentino, or the almost water-colored, but not water-flavored, nurages are worth mentioning. In recent years, some North Italian grape types have been successfully naturalized on the island. Giara de Gesturi is a less known but incomparable site of Sardinia. It's a nature reserve established on a basalt plateau, and for this reason, it can be best visited by car, although nearby there's a narrow-gauge little train which runs from May to September. This railway was built on the highland of Barbagia, on lands untrodden by humans, with lots of curves to save on money, which was meant for the building of bridges and tunnels. The nature reserve can be accessed from the villages of Turi or Gesturi. From there, we have only to follow the signs. Endless olive groves run up the hillsides. Between the orderly rows of grapes, almond trees stand guard. A flock of sheep grazes in the thick grass. The plateau is covered by macchia shrubs, wantonly winding olive trees, and large, dark cork oak woods. The basalt doesn't let the water through, so the rainfall stands and remains in the dents until it's dried up by the heat of the summer sun. In the puddles, different water plants grow in an incredible abundance, laying a white, yellow, and pink carpet in front of our feet. Every season has its typical plant. At the end of summer, for instance, red claret and deep blackberries peek out of the bushes. This is when strawberries, blackberries, cornus, rosehips, and mulberries ripen. Local housewives find many uses for these fruits, and the children like to go out into the forest to collect the berries. When the macchia is blooming, the blue European bee-eaters set off on their way. These little birds with their beautiful feathers have become the symbol of Sardinian tourism. This is a paradise where cattle and sheep graze and pigs root about. Wild boars, domestic pigs, and their crossbred semi-wild, semi-striped piglets trample on the dry fallen leaves and parched grass. Those who spend a longer time here can see hedgehogs, squirrels, foxes, and of course, lots of birds. Binoculars are definitely a must for any kind of excursion here. Taking pictures is not forbidden either, and there's an abundance of subjects. And it's useful to take food and drink along, because the nearest restaurants can be found in Tulli or in Gesturi. What makes Giara de Gesturi unique is the stud farm of 1,500 wild horses, moving completely unimpeded, which is unparalleled in Europe. These horses have never seen horseshoes, saddles, or carriages. They live here like their ancestors did for several centuries or millennia. We identify wild horses with mustangs and their natural habitat with the wild prairies of America, the Wild West. However, many large groups of wild horses used to live in several parts of Europe. But since then, they've been forced into farms, riding schools, and breeding farms. On the basalt plateau, the air is hazier and it rains more often than on the coast. Puddles steaming in the heat and fog floating in the forests make this landscape fabulous. We would expect legendary animals, unicorns or centaurs, to appear from the enchanted woods, but only peaceful horses graze here, languidly bearing the rain. People lived in this paradisiacal landscape in times lost in the ancient past. In Sardinia, we can find many castles and nurages, which are edifices built of ashlars. Some of them are located in the national park as well. The information booklet of the Visitors Center, written in 3 languages, which is given with the admission ticket, gives a detailed description of the animals living here, provides help in identifying the birds and plants of the area, and tells about the origins and functions of the stone buildings. You can cover the 12-kilometer long, 4 to 6 kilometer wide plateau in about an hour. Still, it's worth devoting half or maybe an entire day to it. The marked tourist path is 9 kilometers long, but time flies during frequent stops, observing wild game from hides and when taking pictures. Tuili, a little mountain village, became a tourist destination due to its proximity to the national park. Here we can find restaurants, public telephones, and shops. But besides its wonderful scenic view, It has an attraction that has brought islanders here on pilgrimages for decades. Its church stands out even in Italy, abundant in Baroque churches. Fra Nicola di Gesturi was born in Tuili, and he started his ecclesiastical work in this church. Later, he carried out services in Cagliari. The Franciscan monk is at least as much respected personality on Sardinia as the Nobel Prize-winning writer Grazia Deledda or the greatest Sardinian poet Sebastiano Sata singing the praises of Babbagia Mountain. Fra Nicola, due to his pious deeds and generosity, was raised to the altar of the church. Tuili and Gesturi try to commemorate the local servant of the church in every possible way. According to geologists, Arbatax is the most interesting place on Sardinia from a geographical point of view. This is the only place on the island where rocks of red porphyry, black diorite, and gray granite are found together. The multicolored rock formations are especially beautiful in the sunshine and at sunset. If we add the ever-reviving sea and white sand, we can understand why the former little fishing village has become such a popular holiday resort. With only 1,100 residents, Arbatax lies on a peninsula where long, sandy beaches and resorts overgrown with pines and tamarisks can be found. The little bays of Marina di Gairo are particularly beautiful, behind which some colorful, steep tower rocks create a scenic background. The majority of the deserted bays can be approached only from the sea. We can always find some boatmen in the nearby ports who gladly take tourists to a pleasant beach for a small fee. Sometimes sun umbrellas line the lower edge of the round watchtowers on the beach. These towers were not built for lifeguards, and they should not be mistaken for nurages either. These are Saracen watchtowers, built on order of Spanish viceroys between the 16th and 18th centuries. At that time, North African pirates were considered a real danger. Villages farther away from the coast were often robbed too, and the residents were deported as slaves. Once, 100 towers like this protected the island, of which 60 have remained undamaged even today. One attraction of the area is Tiscali, which offers a special view to those who take the journey upon themselves. The steep mountain path starts from the Fluminero River, which, through the canyon of Gorupo and the 1,000-meter-high Monte Odeon, leads to Tiscali. The vertical walls of the canyon are 150 to 200 meters high, and the narrowest places are hardly wide enough for a man to pass through. Those who take the 3-hour mountain tour can reach a settlement which is otherwise impossible to approach. The Eolithic castle of Tiscali can't be seen from outside, as it was built in a cave of the mountain. The numerous cavities and caves provided a home and shelter to tribes of the Stone Age. Their tiny objects left behind can be seen in the Cagliari National Museum. Calagonone was once a fishing village at the foot of the 882-meter-high Monte Bardi, but tourism has kept it afloat recently. We can reach the settlement by a tunnel, then on a winding serpentine. The whole Supramontani coast can be seen from here. Calagonone is a departure point to 2 different sites. Grotta di Spagnoli Cave is not far from here, where we can go down into a tunnel past a 38-meter-high stalactite. The other cave is the Grotta del Bue Marino, which can be approached only by boat and only from here between April and October. We can choose among a lot of possibilities in the harbor. There are boats that carry tourists only to the Dripstone Cave, but there are also some taking a long circular tour with or without visiting the cave. In high season, a lot of people visit the lonely bays by ship or boat to spend the day swimming, relaxing, and doing some water sports. In the harbor, we can also rent power boats, little sailing boats, and in case we're unable to bring them along, surfboards and kites. Larger ships can be rented also with crew, though it's advisable to think about the reservation in advance. Five kilometers of the dripstone cave have been excavated, but now only 1 kilometer can be visited. It entails an approximately 30-minute walk there and back and is a fascinating experience. Grotta del Marino means the cave of sea cows and refers to a rare species of seals, of which some specimens still live. The effect, forms, and colors of dripstones and water make this excursion unforgettable. Don't forget that however hot the sun shines, we should take a sweater and maybe even socks along for the cave tour. The most popular beach of the area is Cala Luna Bay, which is a romantic, rocky beach with caves. The neighboring Dorgali was founded by an Arabian pirate leader called Drugal in the 8th century. Today, the village is mostly famous for its folklore, colorful and black national costumes, and silver jewelry worn mainly by the locals on public holidays. The most populated settlement of the area is Nuoro. The author, Grazia Deledda, who was given the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1926, was born and lived here. Her novels and short stories take place in Sardinia and express her love of her birthplace. Her birthplace is still held in high repute, more of a shrine than a museum, where flowers never fade on her grave. The Tenno is the only navigable river of the island. The scenic medieval town Bossa was built in the estuary of the river. Phoenician writings from the 9th century mention the little settlement, which used to be directly on the coast, but later moved towards the inland because of Moorish occupation and pirate attacks. The castle on top of the mountain and the village around it were erected at that time. Today, only tourists arrive from the sea. Therefore, the new holiday resort of Bossa is being built where the ancient settlement stood thousands of years ago. It's worth visiting the castle with 3 bastions, which dates back to 1112, as well as the Catalonian Gothic-style St. Anthony's Church. The 3-storied houses standing close to each other and the stone bridge in front of them are uniquely intimate. Women doing embroidery sit at the entrance of buildings hidden behind the palm grove. Who knows why, but men prefer to spend their time in the arched old trattorias where the delicious local wine called Malvasia is sold. In Mediterranean countries, wine biscuits or some tasty bits always accompany wines. In Sardinia, mainly olives, dry sausages, and frutti di mare are served, as well as the local specialty called subistoku, which is a cross between bread and melba toast. The crepe bread, which is as thin as a membrane, called sheet music by locals, is a Sardinian specialty. In fact, they eat every kind of pasta just as much as the Italians. Spaghetti and ravioli are especially popular. Among meat dishes, sheep and piglet are the favorites, but they eat beef, veal, and kid too. Their sweets almost always include honey and almonds. Alghero is a piece of Catalonia, on the island of Sardinia, that belongs to Italy. Catalonian is the official language here. Bilingual street signs are evidence. Cala Barcelona, Cala Mallorca. The relics of the Castellonian and Spanish past differentiate this town from the others. The palaces and churches with their stone filigree work, doorways, and ornamentation evoke the Spanish style of earlier times. The bastions which protected the town against attacks from the sea have remained here. These were connected by promenades. From Torre la Maddalena, we can see the harbor and the limestone rocks of Capocaccia in the distance. We can set sail from the harbor at the foot of the tower to Grotta di Nettuno. The Gothic arch of the other gate, Porta Terra, functions as a frame for the monument of the World War. The huge bronze cannon comes from the times when the island was exposed to the continuous attacks of pirates. Intimate little cafes and bars welcome those who want to relax under the shady trees of the town park and on the tiny squares. Old churches and little Renaissance palaces stand in the medieval streets. Maybe the most beautiful of them is Palazzo Machin, the palace of the Archbishop from 1660. The Church of San Francesco in the heart of the old town is an oasis of silence. A night in the guest house set up in the former monastic cells above the ambulatory must be a unique experience. The handicraft products of Sardinia are based on Sardinian traditions. The pocket knives, musettes, leather belts of shepherds, as well as woven baskets and corkwood boxes, have become beloved souvenirs of tourists. The cork crop of Italy comes almost entirely from Sardinia. Not only cork is made of corkwood. Local people also make ornaments from it, but due to its good insulating quality, it's often used as floor and wall covering. Using the wool of sheep, women weave blankets and rugs with ancient patterns. Jewels made of sea corals are also characteristic. Wrought iron spits, grills, and other equipment used for the ever-popular barbecuing could be a very useful present. The market of almost every larger town or village offers a great choice of handicrafts. Grotta di Nettuno is one of the famous dripstone caves of the island. It can be approached by boat from the harbor of Alghero or Portocorte, or by car we can go to the lighthouse of Capocaccia, from where 652 stairs lead down into the cave. The huge cavities contain some little lakes above which dripstones hang. To visit Grotta di Nettuno, or Neptune Cave, groups are sent off every hour. The lighthouse, or more precisely the view that opens from here, is worth a visit in itself. Sunset is especially amazing here. Next to the road leading to Olbia stands an unusual church, Santissima Trinità di Saccagia, which can be seen from a distance. The building with stripes of black and white stones was created in the 12th century in Pisan times. It's the work of Tuscan and Lombardian architects. Its portico, richly decorated facade, stone engravings, capitals covered with animal characters, and rosette windows provide us opportunity for long contemplation. High square towers and a single nave construction is characteristic. The inside is decorated with a timber ceiling and a cycle of frescoes depicting Maria and the saints. Santissima Trinità di Saccagia is surrounded by the ruins of the former building of the monastery and ambulatory, which were left to decay, contrary to the main building. With nearly 120,000 inhabitants, Sassari is the second largest city of Sardinia. Its new districts were built on the basis of the Italian cities on the continent. The old district, however, with narrow, winding streets and 15th to 16th century buildings, follows Sardinian traditions. The city was thought to be a rebellious one, even when Giovanni Maria Angio wanted to establish the notions of the Great French Revolution. Today, Sassari is in favor of secession from Italy. Basque Country, or Ireland, are good examples of years and years of civil wars caused by the desire for independence. Sardinia, however, has managed to remain within the confines of parliamental democracy. There's been no need to be afraid of armed forces or attacks. Sassari is an academic city and the center of the archbishop, which was established by Byzantium in the 10th century. According to this, several of its palaces and public buildings are worthy of the attention of visitors. Of the museums, the collection of the Ethnographical Museum is extremely rich. The well, Fonte Rossello, with its clear water decorated with an embossing which depicts the four seasons, is also famous. The most beautiful Spanish Baroque-style religious building of all of Italy is St. Nicholas Church in Sassari. The Romanesque building from the 13th century was expanded in the 15th century. 2 centuries later, a dome was added. A further century later, the arched terraced facade facing St. Nicholas Square was also completed. Today, this overly ornamented yet elegant Baroque building has become a dominating element of the cityscape. The inner side is of Aragon and Gothic style. In the chapel, members of the Savoy ducal family find their resting place. Costa Sardo is one of the most beautiful and characteristic sights of the whole island. It's the essence of Sardinia. Here, everything is found in one place which the lively fantasy of tourists can imagine about the Sardinian world. The French poet Paul Valéry wrote the following at the beginning of the 20th century. What a beautiful part of the world! What fruit-ripening weather! What perfect effect of 12 cities and 70 smaller villages! Its favorably located beaches are protected by mountains, and its climate is so mild that it could support even 5 million residents. The island bears glorious future centuries in itself, just like the victorious centuries of its past. Travelers can firmly agree with this statement even today. And from a guidebook, there's a huge trachyte cone emerging from the blue sea with a medieval castle on its peak, terrace streets that are difficult to walk on, intact protecting walls, and stone houses. We can see women or, after school, young girls everywhere sitting in the doorways or on the stone stairs of their homes, weaving baskets from palm bark, reeds, and wicker. Don't forget about coral jewelry and ornaments, which have a great tradition on the island, especially near Costa Sardo. One of the most well-known restaurants of Sardinia, Da Maria Giuseppa, can be found in Costa Sardo, which is a real trattoria where the entire family of the owner is busy in the kitchen or around the guests. The polygonal tower of the 15th century dome, covered with majolica tiles, is a good orientation point in the labyrinth of the narrow little streets. Inside, valuable religious paintings of Sardinian masters may be found from the time when the castle was built by the Dorian family. The castle, built on a cliff washed by waves from 3 sides, is almost impregnable, and it's very convenient for the observation of an enemy approaching from the sea. Originally, it was called Castle Genovese. Then, since 1478, it's been called Castle Aragonese. On the seacoast, the rocks torn by the wind and the salty water don't provide an ideal place for swimming. In compensation, the long-stretching sand dunes of Marina di Sorso and Platamona are barely 15 kilometers away. The famous Elephant Rock of Costa Sardo stands by the road leading to Sedini. Indeed, not much imagination is needed to see the elephant in this masterpiece caused by erosion. According to archaeologists, the hollow inside of the rock used to be a burial place. Sant'Antina is the royal castle of the nurage culture. It rises magnificently in the valley named Valle dei Nuraghi. Its middle tower is almost 15 meters high, which is a real skyscraper, considering the level of technology at the time. There are low fences and high walls in concentric circles. The dim corridors, stairs, and the atmosphere of the inner courtyard still touch people. Only a few such old and undamaged monuments can be found in the world. Who the architects were, who erected more than 8,000 buildings on the island of Sardinia using stones that weighed a ton, we don't know. But it's certain that they arrived from the direction of the sea around 1800 BC. There's hardly any other ethnic group whom we know so little about, in spite of the fact that their descendants still live among us. The Punic conquerors didn't destroy these tribes, but absorbed those who submitted into their own culture. Costa Smeralda, or the Emerald Coast, is perhaps the most attractive region of Sardinia. it is definitely for vacationers and bathers. The 55-kilometer coastal sector, a delight to the eye, was discovered by the well-known billionaire Aga Khan in the 1960s. It was a favorite topic of contemporary Western European tabloids that the billionaire bought the lands of penniless poor peasants and shepherds at a cheap price to build very expensive luxury villas, hotels, and holiday resorts. The island, due to the conscious and long-term area development plans and a responsible way of thinking, has not become the victim of soulless mass tourism. The native Sardinians are tradition-abiding, devoted to the protection of nature, and exercise the necessary caution when allowing innovations induced by tourists. In other words, they don't permit the coast to be expropriated for private purposes. They don't block the view of the water from local residents and tourists by building large hotels. They refuse building permission for cement blocks that don't fit into the landscape and for which entire forests should be cut down or hills removed. The cleanliness of the coast, the good air, and a tolerable amount of people, even in peak season, are all aspects that come before profit-making. It's no coincidence that the beaches earned the blue flag of the EU year by year in recognition of the cleanness of the water. It's also no accident that the island often hosts conferences on environmental protection. Of course, the importance of industrial production and the creation of jobs can't be disregarded either. However, it's extremely positive that the industrial zones have been developed reasonably far away from the holiday resorts and nature reserves. The otherwise quite large hotels blend into the rocks and cliffs. They're not ostentatious, nor are they modern just for modernity's sake. Here, everything serves the purpose of preserving the island just as fabulous and clean as it always has been. This is what makes it different from other tourist paradises and what makes the time spent here unforgettable. Baia Sardinia is one of the nicest sandy and rocky beaches from which a beautiful view opens up to the La Maddalena Islands. Beyond the natural beauties, it's also worth sailing here because the house of Giuseppe Garibaldi, the most famous hero of Italy, stands here, a house which he himself built. In his book, White Pirate, Fred Mustard Stewart described the island thus: departing from the port town of Maddalena, facing the Bonifacio Strait between Sardinia and Corsica, he headed towards the east, walking across the island. Upon reaching the coast, he saw the even smaller rocky island of Caprera, the northern side of which, according to his knowledge, had been bought by Garibaldi. Caprera was a wild and rough land. Jovibarba, tamarisks, myrtles, and some olive trees that have run wild grow on it. Wild goats that gave the name to the island breed on it, and they've eaten all vegetation which they could get hold of. The population of the island consists of a few goat shepherds. The fisherman pointed at a wooden hut on the rocky hill standing in front of us and said, "Garibaldi." Today, the house is a memorial museum. The general, who died in 1882, rests in the neighboring graveyard. The region used to be a shelter for bandits, castaways, and political refugees, a real end of the world. Today, it's the holiday resort of the aristocracy and the upper class. In Caniglione, Portocervo, and Maddalena, villas and apartment houses are lined up, one more beautiful than the other. Although there aren't any amusement parks here, contrary to the continent, children still like to vacation on Sardinia. Just as the Italians, Sardinians love children and do anything so that the bambini will have a good time. This rubs off on the parents too, whether in hotels, restaurants, on the beach, and everywhere. This friendly atmosphere also helps to overcome any possible language barriers. We should follow the example of the locals and take advantage of the cooler mornings, leaving the hot afternoons for a siesta in order to be able to enjoy even more the pleasant climate after sunset. The road running along the coast, leading from Arzachena to Palau, offers an unforgettable experience for the admirers of nature. In many places on Sardinia, we can see granite rocks that, as a result of the effect of wind and water, are shaped into some kind of animal. At Costa Smeralda, we can see an elephant. Here, we find a bear. Campidoro is the favorite subject of calendars, postcards, and photo albums. Barren cliffs, green pine groves, sandy little bays, and the flowering fields alternate, proving the diversity of nature. We've already mentioned golf, horse tours, bike rides, and mountain climbing. But we haven't talked about a relatively new kind of sport, canyoning, or water walking, which is called torrentissimo in Italian, and for which the rocky creeks and canyons of Sardinia are ideal. The coast between Cagliari and Santa Maria Navarrese is perfectly suitable for kayaking, while the island world of the National Park of La Maddalena is ideal for snorkeling and scuba diving. We can inquire about sport opportunities at the tourist office. And the internet can always provide useful pieces of advice. Many ferries leave the port of Palau, and many tourists coming from the Italian boot see the coasts of Sardinia here first. From here to Genoa by ship is 4.5 hours, to Porto Vecchio is 2.5 hours, and to Naples is 14 hours. Santa Teresa de Gallura, a town of 4,500 residents, is the most northern settlement of the island. From here, we can make an excursion to Punta Falcone, which is very popular due to its steep cliffs rising from the sea and its excellent scenic view. The bizarre rock formations of the Capo Testa Peninsula is extremely interesting. Near the port, the ruins of a Greek-Roman building have been excavated. From Santa Teresa, it's only 1 hour by ship to get to the port of Bonifacio in Corsica, to where ferries depart several times a day. In clear weather, we can see the white chalk rocks of South Corsica in the distance, and behind the mountains covered with woods. The island of Sardinia can be accessed from the Italian mainland but also from Genoa, from Livorno, and from Civitavecchia, which is close to Rome. And it also has a regular connection with Sicily and the island of Corsica, which belongs to France. Ships mostly depart in the evening and call at port at dawn. At this time, it's more expensive, but also more comfortable to spend the night in a cabin. It's advisable to book places in advance. Of course, there is the possibility to go by plane also, but in this case, it's worth renting a car on the island. The biggest airport is in Olbia, and most charter planes arrive here. Let us bid farewell to the island of Sardinia with the lines of the local poet Francesco Massola. This is our land. We were born here. Here, into the salty wind, to the north wind wailing the pains of the sea, to here, the shades of the majestic trees and the thorns of the pink rock rose, we march and march from the coldness of the mountain to the warmth of the plains. The night is pale white from our flocks.